My name is Mary. I am 40 years old. 18 years ago, I believed love meant safety. And for me, that safety had a name: John. I was 22 when we married, and he was 27. Our wedding was simple: a small church, soft music, and trembling hands. When John held my hand that day, he held it like a promise that he would never let go. And for many years, he didn't. Our first home was tiny, a 2-bedroom apartment with creaky wood floors and a kitchen so small that even 2 people cooking had to squeeze past each other. The walls were painted a cheerful yellow that was already peeling at the corners. We had little: a threadbare couch and a scratched dinner table we'd inherited. But we had big hearts. Every night, we'd sit on our old couch, ordering inexpensive spicy noodles from the corner takeout. The TV's flickering light made shadows dance on the walls, but in the glow, we laughed about all our dreams. John would tell me how hard he would work to build a better future. I would grin and whisper about the family I hoped we'd have someday. Every morning, John woke before dawn and dressed carefully, quietly, so as not to wake me. I pretended to sleep through it, just to watch him through half-open eyes. He'd brew a cup of strong black coffee, bitter and steaming, and slip a kiss onto my forehead before leaving. "Sleep a little more, love," he'd whisper, and I'd smile, pulling the covers up a bit higher. When John walked through the door at night, it was like sunlight bursting into a dark room. He'd drop his briefcase with a thud, toss me his tired but joyful grin, and immediately ask in that playful voice of his, "Where's my queen?" I would drop whatever I was doing, flour on my shirt, laundry in my arms, and run to him. Sometimes, in the kitchen, he'd spin me around, careful not to bump the counters. Flour would puff from my hair, or Lily's toy would roll under my feet, but he'd laugh and hold me closer. In those moments, holding John's warm hand and hearing his laugh, I truly believed everything would always be okay. A few years later, in the first hours of a spring dawn, I held our son Adam for the first time. He was so small, fingers curled like tiny shells. My hands were shaking. I was scared, overwhelmed, and crying all at once. John stood beside me, wiping tears from his eyes as he whispered, "He's perfect." He didn't sleep a minute that night, staring at the 2 of us. I felt like we were fragile miracles he was guarding. 2 years after Adam, Lily arrived with a wild cry and rosy cheeks. Suddenly, our home felt louder and brighter. Crayons lined the halls like colorful confetti. Toy cars sat in the corners, ready to race. Many mornings, I woke with cereal on my shirt and 100 sticky fingers clinging to me. There were days I forgot what day it was, brushing out tangles at noon and feeling lipstick stains on my collar. I was exhausted beyond words. But every evening, when John came home, he'd take Adam from the floor and tuck Lily under his arm, then smile at me with those gentle eyes. "You're doing amazing," he'd say softly. I would exhale, forgetting my tiredness, feeling cherished. I stayed home with the children. It wasn't glamorous. I wore stained sweatshirts instead of suits like some of my friends. When they talked about promotions over dinner, I smiled and listened politely, even though a little pang of envy settled in my heart. But I told myself this was my purpose, a life full of love and family. John carried the financial weight, and I carried the chaos and warmth of home. We were a team. We weren't perfect. The peeling paint and loose sock at the door were proof of that. But we were happy. We celebrated birthdays with cheap cakes and too many candles, took silly family photos during Christmas, and saved pennies wherever we could. At night, after the kids were asleep, John and I would sit on the edge of our bed, talking in whispers. The muffled city sounds came through the window. "Imagine," he'd say, brushing a lock of my hair behind my ear. "When we're old and gray, we'll sit on a porch somewhere and laugh about all this." I'd laugh too, believing we were building something unbreakable. For years, life felt secure. But then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, something began to change. John started coming home later. "Work's been crazy," he'd mutter over dinner with tired eyes. I nodded and smiled, dismissing my worry. He began taking business trips out of town. "Just a few days," he said, tossing his suit jacket over the back of the chair. I watched him pack and reminded myself it was normal. It was his job. Yet he stopped calling out, "Where's my queen?" when he came home. He stopped swinging me around for no reason. He even started locking his phone at night, something he never did before. I couldn't help but notice my own reflection. New lines by my eyes, and nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if everything was still all right. One evening, after putting Adam and Lily to bed, I sat alone in the dark living room. The silence was heavy. I looked at our wedding photo on the wall, two bright-eyed kids clutching hands. I couldn't remember the last time John looked at me like that. My heart clenched as a quiet, terrible thought crept in. What if something is slipping away, and I'm the last to know? The first time I felt real fear, nothing dramatic happened. Just small, unsettling moments. One night, John came home later than usual. The house was quiet with the children sleeping. He dropped his keys on the counter and walked past me, heading for the shower. "Long day?" I asked softly, trying to sound casual. "Yeah," he mumbled, his back to me. His voice was low and distant. He didn't smile. There was no joking, no warm greeting, just an unfamiliar silence. I busied myself finishing the dishes, but my mind kept wandering. Halfway through drying a plate, I noticed John's phone light up on the kitchen counter. A small white icon blinked. I reached for it before thinking. He never locked his phone. The screen showed a message preview, just a little red heart emoji from an unknown number. My breath caught. I pressed the button to open the messages, hands trembling. It was locked. He had set a passcode. My heart pounded as I stared at the locked screen. For months, we'd never needed secrets. My chest tightened. I told myself it was nothing. I was imagining things. The next morning, John was gone early for another business trip. I helped him pack silently, folding shirts and tying shoes. He didn't hug me goodbye as usual. He just pulled me in for a quick, stiff kiss on the cheek. 3 days, he said softly. I nodded, wondering why I still bothered to ask about work. As soon as he was gone, I looked around the nearly empty room, heart racing. That's when I saw them. 2 plane tickets peeking out from under his jacket on the dresser. One said, city name. The other said, city name, with my name on one and another woman's name on the other. My vision blurred. I felt dizzy. The tickets fluttered to the floor, and I sank onto the edge of the bed, the papers still clenched in my hand. Outside, a car honked, and a distant lawnmower droned on. Life was going on as usual, but I felt the ground drop away. 18 years of trust and love felt like a fragile shell I was watching crack. My hands were shaking. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. I wanted to scream his name, to demand answers, but I stayed silent. I was terrified of what would come out if I made a sound. When John returned that evening, I put on a brave face. I greeted him with a hug like I did every night, even though every inch of me wanted to rip into him. Adam and Lily ran to the door, and John lifted them up with a smile. I forced a weak grin and asked how the trip went. He talked about flights and meetings as if nothing had happened. Inside, I felt empty. Every laugh and question I forced at the dinner table felt hollow. I remembered my promise to myself. I had to keep our family together, for Adam and Lily. So I stayed quiet, sliding back into our old roles. I packed away my shock and placed a warm plate in front of John. But late that night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on our bed, clutching the tickets. I stared at the peeling wallpaper, tears I refused to let fall, slowly tracing my cheeks. My heart ached in a way I'd never known. The world outside kept spinning normally, but inside me, everything had stopped. Who is Alex? John's voice cut through the living room air. We stood facing each other after dinner. Adam and Lily had already gone to bed, and a single lamp glowed between us. John's eyes were red with suspicion, and he was holding my phone, on which a string of messages from Alex was open. My heart sank. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "He's an old friend," I said softly. John's face twisted with anger. "An old friend?" he spat. "You text him every night." I felt a quiet rage building. "Yes, John, I did." My voice shook, despite my efforts to stay calm. "I had to talk to someone, because you stopped talking to me." He glared at me. "Don't turn this on me," he snapped. Tears pricked at my eyes. For a moment, silence fell. I found my voice trembling. "Who is she, John?" I asked quietly, just loud enough. "Who is this woman?" His face went pale. His jaw tightened, and for a second I thought he might run away. Instead, he sat down heavily on the couch, running a hand through his hair. I stayed standing. It just happened," he mumbled, eyes fixed on the carpet. His confession hung in the air. "That's all you have to say?" I asked, feeling numb. "Who is she?" He finally looked at me, and I saw the guilt on his face. "You found out." He closed his eyes. I was lonely. I mean, I wasn't thinking. It just happened." My chest ached. "How long?" I whispered. He swallowed hard. "Almost a year," he admitted. "But I ended it, Mary. The day you collapsed, I ended it. I promise." I felt a hot wave of betrayal and relief together. "Ended it?" I asked. He nodded, but the pause spoke volumes. Later that night, we slept apart for the first time in years. The house felt divided. I lay awake, recalling every smile John had turned into a lie for months. My body felt heavy, not just with exhaustion, but with heartbreak. Over the next few days, I faded into myself. I went through the motions, feeding the kids, putting them to school, doing laundry, while John hovered anxiously beside me, trying to help. But nothing felt the same. Sometimes I sat at the kitchen table, tea in hand, and realized I hadn't processed the betrayal at all. My mind replayed every glance and every lie in silent loops. One afternoon, as I was carrying a laundry basket upstairs, the world swam. My head throbbed like a drum. Before I could reach the bathroom, the kitchen light was spinning and then nothing. John found me slumped on the kitchen floor and called an ambulance. Everything after is a blur of flashing lights and loud voices. When I finally woke up, I was in a hospital bed. A thin white blanket covered me. The fluorescent lights buzzed above. John sat in a hard plastic chair beside me, holding my hand tightly. He looked exhausted, his eyes bloodshot and full of tears. He didn't say a word at first. He just squeezed my hand. I felt weak, every muscle in my arm barely moving. The tubes and wires around me beeped softly with my heartbeat. Slowly, John leaned over me, his hand brushing my damp forehead. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm right here." He was crying openly now. "I was so stupid," he choked out. "I should have come to you. I was losing you, and I didn't realize what I had until this. I nearly lost you, and I will never forgive myself." I closed my eyes against the bright light, feeling each word knock around in my chest. "Did you end it?" I managed to whisper. John nodded firmly. "The night you collapsed, it ended." He looked at me, his cheeks wet with tears. "I love you, Mary. I love you so much." For a long moment, I watched his face, the familiar lines now etched with fear and remorse. He held my gaze. Somewhere deep down, I wanted to believe him. After the hospital, days blended into each other in silence and small steps. John was trying, helping more with the kids, cooking meals, showing up for Lily's school projects. But trust is not rebuilt overnight. I still felt the pit of betrayal when he smiled at me or teased our daughter. One evening, restless and uncertain, I drove to see Alex. We met at a quiet cafe on the other side of town. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windows. Alex stood and managed a kind smile when he saw me. His eyes held concern and relief. "You look stronger," he said gently. I managed a weak smile. "I had to be," I replied. We talked for a while. I told him I was sorry if I had been distant. He shrugged it off. "No apologies needed. Just focus on yourself now," he said, handing me a cup of tea. The warmth ran through me. Before leaving, I thanked him. "You reminded me I mattered, Alex. I needed that. Truly, thank you." He nodded and squeezed my hand lightly. "You're worth it, Mary. You always were." I stood to go. There was a finality in the air. "Goodbye, Alex," I said softly. "Goodbye, Mary," he replied, smiling sadly as I walked out. Back home that night, I found John sitting on the couch, worry in his eyes as I closed the door. "We need to talk," I said. He nodded and stood, placing both hands gently on my shoulders. "Everything," he said quietly. I looked at him and asked the first question that mattered. "Do you still talk to her?" John's face lost all color. "No," he said immediately. "I ended it for good. You have to believe me." I waited, my heart pounding. "When?" "The day you collapsed. I cut it off," he said firmly. I studied him for a long moment. "Why did you start?" I asked, my voice breaking. He looked down. When he spoke again, it was with all the honesty he could muster. "I felt invisible. We were parents, partners, but we stopped being us. I was lonely and afraid I had lost you. Instead of telling you, I ran away. I'm sorry, Mary. I understand if you can't forgive me." He met my eyes, and I saw the raw truth there. I exhaled slowly. "You never deserved to hurt me. That decision was yours, and you made it." I wiped a tear from my cheek. But I have to be honest too. There were weeks when I doubted us. I talked to Alex only because I was starved for someone to listen. He nodded. "I know." He came closer and took my hands. I am so grateful you're still here." The tension between us didn't vanish that night. We cried and held each other. It was the first time in a long time we truly held each other. We started going to counseling together. Our first session was awkward. We sat on couches in a soft-lit room and literally introduced ourselves as John, Mary's husband, and Mary, John's wife. Tears already streaming before the couch even warmed. We talked for hours, sometimes crying or yelling, but also listening and understanding. Slowly, day by day, we rebuilt our connection. John began leaving his phone on the counter at night and calling me during work just to say, "I love you," in the morning. I started taking moments for myself, too. I curled up by the window with a novel and a cup of tea, breathing in the world without guilt. I walked alone in the park and remembered it was okay to smile at strangers. One evening, tucked into our couch together, it was still that same old couch, Adam and Lily came running in. They were giggling about Lily's new drawing. John lifted Lily onto his lap, and I held Adam close. He looked at me shyly. "Mom, we just want our family together," he said softly. Lily nodded, understanding, even at age 10. I felt a warm tear slip down my cheek as I hugged them both. "Me too," I whispered. No more pretending was necessary. This time, the tears were relief. That night, after tucking them in, I sat on the edge of the bed alone and picked up a leather-bound journal I had bought the day before. I wrote a letter to myself. "Dear Mary, you are strong. You have survived heartbreak and betrayal. You are not foolish for loving deeply. You are worthy of kindness, respect, and honesty. Remember this on the days when doubt tries to creep in." I underlined the last lines. You deserve peace. You chose to rebuild or to leave with grace. Either way, you will survive. When John came in and slid under the covers beside me, I kissed his hand. "We'll be okay," I said quietly. He nodded, wrapping his arms around me. "Yes," he agreed. And that is where we are now. Each day a choice, each small gesture a step forward. The music on the radio played softly as our hands found each other. I was cautious, not perfect, but hopeful. Love, I learned, is not just a feeling. It is the hard work of choosing each other, again and again. The end. And so, our story comes to an end for tonight. I hope it brought you peace and a little bit of magic. If you enjoyed this journey, please leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, sleep well and sweet dreams.